In competitive Melee, leagues and leagues of talented players from the European scene often get overlooked because of a lack of major events across the Atlantic and because tournaments generally run the PAL edition of Melee instead of the NTSC version of the game the rest of the world plays on. But this weekend, Europe's best are going to get their chance to shine at Fate and try their best to defend their turf against Captain Faceroll, Bobby Big Balls, Zamu, and other US players who are looking to bring a gold medal back to the States. But what European players should you be looking out for, and how do these US players feel about their prospects at Fate? Well, for this special edition of Storylines, I reached out to a handful of players who are going to be at Fate so you can get their insights directly. So let me quickly introduce the players I was able to get in contact with on such a short notice so you can get where their takes are coming from. We'll go down the list by seeding, starting with Captain Faceroll, who is only outseeded by Triff at this event. The Cali Sheik was just ranked a career high 17th on the Summer MPGR, and Fate marks his first time ever traveling to Europe for Smash. He says that he's been meaning to go to Europe for a while, and with Fate supporting the movement to NTSC in Europe, and with it being a spiritual successor to Air, the event was an easy choice for him. The other US player I got to speak to before the event was the 4th seed Bobby Big Balls, who was actually flown out to the event thanks to money raised by fans. Bobby is currently the 5th best player in MDVA, who just barely missed the 2018 Top 100 and the MPGR Top 50 in the summer, but that hasn't discouraged him at all, as he still says he's grinding away at least 8 hours a day at the game. Right behind him at the 5th seed is another Falco, Frenzy, who is also the 2nd best player in the UK, behind the more well-known Professor Pro. You might recognize his name from his 9th place run at Super Smash Con last year, where he took sets off of Drunk Sloth and Over Triforce. His goal at the event is to get some top wins and firmly establish himself as someone to be scared to see in bracket at future EU events. The German Fox player and ace seed at the event, Nikki, was also able to make time to talk to me before Fate. If you want to learn more about him and his rise in the game, you can check out my special European edition of Rising Player Spotlight, where I talked about him, Frenzy, Nebby, and Datey. But this weekend, he's looking to make it through the first round and face off with Sechi's Falcon, who he's 1-1 in sets against. But because he's got his semester exams this week, he doesn't have as much time to prep for the event as he wished he did. However, the 9th seed Sechi is already looking past that match and sees a potential path to winners finals, as he says top 16 is filled with players he's beaten in the past, most notably Triff, who is up 2-1 on him. A little bit further down the list, I also spoke with Nebby, the Dutch Yoshi main who's taken wins off of a laundry list of Europe's top talent across the last couple of years. His expectations for putting up a quality performance at the event aren't too high, as he recently switched over to playing on a box at locals, but that doesn't mean he won't be giving it his all. And lastly, I talked to Slim Shady from Germany, who you might know as a Dr. Mario main, but he's recently started his shift over to playing Captain Falcon instead. He's been training his Falcon a lot with Ice, and was able to get top 8 at H-Flan, but he mostly faced off against Foxes there, so he's more realistically hoping for a top 32 finish this weekend in the UK. Now with those guys introduced, we can talk about what they think about some of the projected matches in the top 16 at the event, and which other players we should also have our eyes on. The first matchup I asked them about was Princess Fox versus Faceroll Sheik. Faceroll said that he knows that any Fox can be scary, but he believes that the chances of him losing are pretty minimal, which is a sentiment echoed by Europe's players. Nikki puts his chances around 20% because Princess says that he's been de-rusting, which means he hasn't played for 3 days despite Fate being right around the corner. Next was Prof defending his turf against the Rising Star Zamu, which is a reverse in skill and location of the first match. Nikki agrees with this sentiment and says it's strongly in Prof's favor unless he, in his words, Omega chokes, and Frenzy has faith in his UK brethren as well, saying that Prof beat Zamu in one of the events leading up to Don't Park on the Grass. Then the match I'm hoping the most that we get to see is Frenzy versus Bobby Big Balls. Bobby does say that he's probably currently playing the best he's ever played because of the perpetual state of improvement that he's currently in, but he does also recognize the pressure of being funded to go to the event, and playing outside of his region may cause him to not make it to Frenzy in bracket. But he says if he does get there, the Falco Ditto can get pretty swingy and random at times, which makes him think it could go either way. Frenzy surprisingly didn't have much to say for the match that he's projected to lose by seed. He does have Fat Tino and Mordo in his region, so he's not going into the Ditto completely blind, but it's going to be exciting to see how it turns out nonetheless. Whether Bobby or Frenzy wins, the general consensus on both sides of the pond is that either bird would get demolished by Triff's Peach. So it looks like Triff is safe to make it to winners finals with a Falco in his path, but if Sechi makes a run and gets there instead, he could very realistically make their head-to-head 3-1 for the year and come face to face with Face Roll. But if everything goes according to plan, we'll be finishing off the event with a battle of the Atlantic between two top 20 players, with Triff being the champion of Europe and FaceRoll trying his best to bring the gold back to the US. FaceRoll's thoughts on the matchup are better said in his words, and I quote, "Peach is busted, but in my head I'm imagining Triff getting tilted from NTSC, and I've heard he's sick this weekend, which is super convenient for me." And whereas FaceRoll thinks he'll win but isn't the most confident about it, Nikki is a bit more confident and says, and I quote, "I think Triff is definitely favored though, since he has the results and the experience against Over, and since Over does such nutty things all the time, there won't be anything FaceRoll can do that will surprise Triff." And he continues, "I'd say it's 65-35 in Triff's favor, but just like FaceRoll versus Prof, it can swing in either direction really." And with that out of the way, but before we end off this video, let's highlight two more players that Europe's Finest said we should be keeping our eyes out for as well. Easily the player that got the most praise sent his way was Mint. He's the second best player in Ireland, only behind Maxi, and he comes in as the 16th best player on the European PR that is soon to be updated. The European boys have a lot of faith in him and say that he's only seeded 13th at the event because of not attending too many majors or traveling to the US, but upsetting Bobby Big Balls, who is in his projected path, would for sure show the world the power of Irish Melee. The other is Popmeister 6000, Sweden's 10th best player, who's been having a huge breakout over the last 12 months, taking wins over Nebby, Dady, Pipsqueak, and was even able to take Amsa to the brink at Phoenix Blue, but was barely not able to clutch it out. He's unfortunately all the way down to the 15th seed, which means he's got a date with FaceRoll to stay on winner's side, which would be a crazy win that could maybe even carry him to a top 100 spot by itself. But we'll more likely see him rest his fellow Europeans on a run to top 8 from loser's side. And that about does it for my short coverage of Fate. For more information about the event and when it will be streaming, check out the Smash GG link down in the description. I'm so thankful for all the players who got back to me on such a short notice to help me out with this video, so if you've enjoyed any of their comments on the event or liked any of the combos shown off in their clips, be sure to go follow them on Twitter and support them in any way you can. Also, if there's any more European hidden bosses that I skipped out on, please let me know about them down in the comments, because I'm always looking to learn more about the European scene. And that about does it for me. I've been SaveAsUntitled, and I'll see you guys next time.